For decades, the United States has held a significant influence over Mexico, both politically and economically. The two countries have long been tightly bound by trade, manufacturing, and shared interests. However, a dramatic shift is quietly unfolding, one that could alter the course of history. Mexico, once firmly within the U.S.'s sphere of influence, is now gradually turning towards China, seeking new opportunities and alliances that could reshape the North American landscape. This shift isn't a mere rumor, it's a reality that could change everything. Mexico is at a crossroads, facing a pivotal choice that will shape its future for years to come. Historically, Mexico's relationship with the U.S. has been central to its economic and political structure. But this relationship is beginning to show cracks, and the growing presence of China in Mexico is making it harder to ignore. The U.S., preoccupied with its own internal challenges, has failed to recognize that its neighbor to the south has other options. And now, as China's influence in Mexico accelerates, the U.S. is facing the possibility of losing its grip on a key ally. One of the primary reasons for Mexico's shift is the rapid growth of China's presence, particularly in the electric vehicle (EV) market. Chinese companies are investing heavily in Mexico, building factories, and introducing cutting-edge technology that the U.S. currently cannot match. This is more than just a few factories springing up. It's a full-blown investment in reshaping Mexico's automotive sector. The shift is significant not only for Mexico but for global power dynamics. As Mexico becomes a major player in the electric vehicle revolution, the U.S. finds itself struggling to keep up. Electric vehicles are the future of transportation, and Mexico, with its proximity to the U.S., is ideally situated to become China's gateway into North America. While the U.S. focuses on trade wars, tariffs, and short-term challenges, China is positioning itself for long-term growth, and Mexico is taking note. Chinese companies are not just establishing factories in Mexico, they are investing in the future of the auto industry, reshaping the entire market. But it's not just about cars. There's an even more significant resource that China has its eye on: lithium. Lithium is the core element used in electric vehicle batteries, and Mexico happens to have vast deposits of it. These resources are located just across the border from the US, and if China secures access to them, it could dominate the global energy market. The implications of this are enormous. If China locks down control of Mexico's lithium, it could reshape the future of energy production and distribution, further shifting the balance of power away from the US and towards China. Mexico finds itself in a delicate position. For years, the country has been closely tied to the U.S. through trade, politics, and manufacturing. However, as the U.S. becomes more absorbed in trade disputes, tariffs, and internal divisions, Mexico is considering the broader picture. China is offering a deal that Mexico simply cannot ignore: massive investments, advanced technology, and the promise of long-term growth. While the U.S. focuses on short-term policies, China is building a foundation for the future, and Mexico is starting to notice. This shift in Mexico's orientation is not just a matter of economic interests. It's part of a larger geopolitical game that's playing out across North America. The U.S. and China are not only clashing over trade tariffs, they are reconfiguring global alliances, and Mexico, sitting right in the middle, is being forced to pick sides. The growing Chinese presence in Mexico signals a potential shift in the power balance of North America, one that does not favor the U.S. China isn't in Mexico for short-term gain. They are thinking long-term. Mexico's location, its access to cheap labor, and its proximity to the U.S. market make it an ideal partner for China's ambitions. With China's expanding electric vehicle market, Mexico stands to become a leader in the industry, thanks to its position as a manufacturing hub. Chinese companies are not just building factories in Mexico, they are reshaping the future of the global automotive industry. Meanwhile, the U.S. remains mired in its own internal struggles, seemingly unaware of the seismic shifts occurring just south of its border. For decades, the U.S. has relied on Mexico as a close partner in manufacturing, trade, and security. But as China offers Mexico a more attractive package, one based on long-term stability and economic growth, Mexico is finding it easier to consider alternatives. The U.S., still focused on tariffs and short-term economic policies, is struggling to keep Mexico within its sphere of influence. And as China's economic footprint in Mexico continues to grow, the U.S. risks losing its longtime ally. This shift in Mexico's alignment is not just about the loss of trade. It represents a significant blow to U.S. influence in the region. Mexico, with its growing economic ties to China, is looking to expand its influence beyond the U.S., potentially positioning itself as a more independent player on the global stage. This change in alliances could reverberate throughout Latin America, as other countries in the region observe Mexico's pivot to China and consider their own relationships with the U.S. The result could be a divided Latin America, with some countries remaining aligned with the U.S. and others shifting toward China. The U.S. could find itself unable to stop this trend. As China solidifies its presence in Mexico, it will become harder for the U.S. to maintain the same level of influence. Mexico is no longer just a manufacturing partner. It's becoming a strategic player in the global economy. If China continues to expand its investments in Mexico, the balance of power in North America could shift dramatically. And the U.S., which has always taken its relationship with Mexico for granted, will have to confront the reality that its closest neighbor is forging new alliances. China's presence in Mexico is not a passing phenomenon. The country is in it for the long haul, and as Mexico strengthens its ties with China, it opens itself up to new opportunities in Asia and beyond. This two-way relationship benefits both countries. China gains access to the U.S. market, while Mexico gains access to China's vast technological and financial resources. The potential for a decades-long partnership is growing, one that could reshape the global economic landscape. Mexico's shift toward China is not an isolated event. It is part of a broader movement occurring throughout Latin America. China is already investing heavily in infrastructure, technology, and manufacturing in several countries across the region. As Mexico moves closer to China, other nations in Latin America are likely to follow suit. If this trend continues, the future of U.S.-Mexico relations could be irreversibly changed. The old alliances, which once seemed so secure, are now looking like relics of the past. The implications of Mexico's pivot to China are far-reaching. It's not just about trade agreements or manufacturing deals, it's about global influence and power. If China continues to build its economic presence in Mexico and throughout Latin America, the U.S. could find itself losing its foothold in the region. The balance of power could shift, and the U.S. might have to accept that Mexico is no longer its backyard. This shift is a serious wake-up call for the U.S. If Mexico continues to deepen its ties with China, it could lead to a loss of jobs, investment, and influence in key industries. For years, Mexico has been a key manufacturing partner for the U.S., but now China is offering something more: stability, long-term growth, and a seat at the table in the global economy. This shift in Mexico's orientation is not just an economic development, it's a seismic change that could reshape the balance of power in North America and beyond. The U.S. must act quickly to secure its place in this new reality, or risk losing its most important ally in the region for good.